The first whisper came through the deep space communication arrays, a fragment of encrypted chatter that intelligence officers across 17 different species dismissed as background noise. But Commander Xilak of the Hegemony Intelligence Division had spent 40 cycles studying human behavioral patterns, and something in that static made his chitinous plates shiver with unease. The message was simple, transmitted on old Earth military frequencies that hadn't been used in decades. Package secured. Coming home. 3 words that would soon echo through nightmares across the galaxy. It had been 8 standard years since the Terran Exodus, when humanity had been systematically expelled from galactic society. The Galactic Council, in their infinite wisdom, had decided that humans were too unpredictable, too violent, too dangerous to remain among civilized species. One by one, human colonies had been evacuated, their populations relocated to the outer rim territories beyond the galactic edge. The official term was voluntary relocation. The humans called it something else entirely. Ambassador Kelthera of the Vex Consortium remembered the day clearly. She had stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council, her crystalline form reflecting the cold light as she delivered the final verdict. Humanity has proven itself incompatible with galactic peace, she had declared, her voice resonating with the authority of 1,000 worlds. For the safety of all civilized species, they must be relocated beyond our borders. The human delegate, a woman named Sarah Chen, had stood silently as the vote was cast. 47 species in favor, 0 opposed, with only the long-extinct precursors abstaining by virtue of being dead for millennia. Chen had looked around the chamber with eyes that burned like dying stars, and when she finally spoke, her words were quiet, almost a whisper. "You're making a mistake," she had said. "You think exile makes us go away. You think distance makes us forget." She had paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. But humans don't forget. And humans don't stay gone forever. The council had dismissed her words as the bitter ranting of a defeated species. They had watched with relief as the massive human evacuation fleets disappeared beyond the galactic rim, carrying with them their chaotic energy, their unpredictable nature, their disturbing tendency to fight impossible odds and somehow win. For 8 years, the galaxy had been peaceful. Trade flowed smoothly along established routes. Conflicts were resolved through proper diplomatic channels. The rigid hierarchies that had maintained order for millennia continued their stately dance across the stars. It was everything the Council had hoped for. But now, monitoring stations along the rim were going dark. Commander Xilak stood in the command center of Hegemony Station Prime, his 4 eyes focused on the holographic display that showed the outer territories. Red markers blinked ominously where communication had been lost. 17 monitoring posts in the past week, all of them positioned along the traditional human evacuation routes. "Sir," his aide clicked nervously, mandibles chattering with anxiety. "The pattern suggests coordinated strikes. Someone is systematically eliminating our early warning network." Xilak's plates shifted, a sign of deep concern among his species. "Not someone," he said quietly. "We know exactly who. The question is what they're preparing for." The answer came 3 days later when the first human fleet appeared at the Nexus Gate, the primary hyperspace junction that controlled access to the inner galaxy. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't demand to speak with authorities. They simply arrived, a formation of ships that shouldn't have existed. The vessels were unlike anything in the current galactic database. Sleek, predatory designs that seemed to drink in starlight. Hull configurations that suggested technologies the Council had never seen. And at their head, a massive dreadnought that broadcast a single message on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Liberation Fleet. We're coming home." The Nexus Gate's defense coordinator, a bloated hut-like creature named Gormax, immediately activated the station's defensive systems. Shields flared to life, weapons charged to full power. The station's complement of fighters launched in perfect formation, exactly as protocol dictated. "Unknown vessels," Gormax transmitted, his voice dripping with bureaucratic authority, you are in violation of Galactic Exclusion Zone 77 Alpha. Turn back immediately or face the consequences. The human response was swift and devastating. The dreadnought's main gun spoke once, a lance of energy that punched through the station's shields like they were made of tissue paper. The blast didn't destroy the station, it simply disabled it, leaving Gormax and his crew floating helplessly as the human fleet passed by without slowing. News of the breakthrough spread across the galaxy at light speed. In council chambers and military headquarters, on trade worlds and research stations, the same question echoed through 1,000 different languages: how? The humans had been exiled with nothing but basic colony ships and survival equipment. 8 years should not have been enough time to develop technology that could casually swat aside hegemony defenses. 8 years should not have been enough time to build a fleet capable of challenging galactic authority. But humans, as the galaxy was about to remember, had never been particularly concerned with what should or should not be possible. On the Vex homeworld of Crystallis Prime, Ambassador Kelphara stood before the Emergency Council, her form flickering with distress patterns. Our xenobiologists assured us that humans could not survive in the Outer Rim territories, she said, her harmonic voice cracking with strain. The radiation levels alone should have killed them within months. Council Speaker Threx, a massive centipede-like being, reared up on his hind segments. Then how do you explain a fleet of ships that our sensors can barely track? How do you explain weapons that make our defenses look like children's toys? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Myrith, a Zephyrian scientist who had spent decades studying human psychology, stepped forward with data pad clutched in his tentacles. Because we underestimated them, he said simply. We always underestimated them. He activated a holographic display showing human historical records. Look at their development pattern. Every time their species faced extinction-level threats, they didn't just survive, they evolved. Nuclear war. They built better weapons and learned to harness atomic energy. Climate change. They terraformed other worlds. Alien invasion in their early space age. They reverse-engineered the technology and used it to reach the stars. The display shifted, showing the evacuation fleets disappearing into the void. We didn't exile them, Dr. Myrith continued, his voice growing quiet with realization. We gave them the greatest challenge their species had ever faced. 8 years alone in the most hostile region of the galaxy, with nothing but their own ingenuity and their rage to keep them warm. Threx's segments clicked together nervously. You're suggesting they've been preparing? I'm suggesting, Yar. Myrith said, that we created our own worst nightmare. The human fleet didn't stop at the Nexus Gate. They pushed deeper into galactic space, their ships moving with a purpose that sent shivers through military commanders across a dozen species. They didn't attack civilian targets, didn't raid trade routes, didn't engage in the random violence that many had expected. Instead, they moved toward specific targets with surgical precision. Admiral Vaktos of the Hegemony Second Fleet moved to intercept them at the Keth Nebula, confident that his 300 warships would be more than sufficient to handle whatever cobbled-together fleet the humans had assembled. He was, after all, commanding vessels that represented the pinnacle of galactic military technology. The battle lasted 17 minutes. The human ships moved like nothing the Hegemony had ever encountered, their formations fluid and adaptive. They used the nebula itself as a weapon, somehow manipulating its electromagnetic properties to disrupt hegemony targeting systems. When the shooting started, their weapons carved through fleet formations with terrifying efficiency. But it wasn't the technology that broke Vaktos's nerve. It was the voices on the communication channels. Human voices, calm and professional, coordinating their attacks with the cold precision of surgeons. No battle cries, no emotional outbursts, just the quiet efficiency of a species that had learned to make war an art form. When Vaktos finally ordered the retreat, only 37 of his ships were still capable of faster-than-light travel. The rest drifted as derelicts, their crews alive but their vessels completely disabled. The humans could have slaughtered them all, but they chose mercy. It was somehow more terrifying than wholesale destruction would have been. As news of the defeat spread, panic began to grip the inner systems. The Galactic Stock Exchange crashed as investors fled to safer currencies. Refugee ships launched from border worlds as families abandoned their homes for the perceived safety of the core systems. Military forces across the galaxy went to high alert, but their commanders had no idea what they were supposed to be defending against. The humans weren't conquering territory. They weren't establishing bases or claiming resources. They were moving towards something specific, and that destination finally became clear when long-range sensors detected the fleet's heading. They were going to Earth. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. Earth had been quarantined since the human exodus, declared a dead world unsuitable for habitation. The official record stated that environmental collapse had rendered the planet uninhabitable, forcing humanity's evacuation to the Outer Rim. But Dr. Myrith, working frantically in his laboratory on Zephyr Station, had uncovered a different truth. The environmental data had been falsified. Earth wasn't dead, it was sleeping. The humans hadn't fled a dying world, they had been forced to abandon a perfectly viable home. They lied to us, he transmitted to the Emergency Council, his tentacles trembling with the implications. The human delegates lied about Earth's condition to make their exile seem more palatable. They knew we would eventually investigate if we thought there was anything worth having. The council chamber erupted in chaos as the revelation sank in. Species that had voted for human exile suddenly realized they had been manipulated into attacking a healthy civilization. The moral implications were staggering, but the practical consequences were worse. If Earth was still habitable, still technologically advanced, then the humans hadn't been starting from nothing in their exile. They had been building on an existing foundation, using 8 years of isolation to prepare for exactly this moment. The human fleet reached Earth's solar system 3 days later, and what they found there defied every assumption the galaxy had made about human capabilities. The system bristled with defensive installations that hadn't existed during the evacuation. Massive orbital platforms, hidden weapon arrays, and most shocking of all, shipyards that had clearly been operating continuously throughout the supposed abandonment. Admiral Chen's dreadnought took position in Earth's orbit, and her voice once again echoed across galactic communication networks. But this time, she wasn't speaking to station commanders or fleet admirals. She was speaking directly to the Galactic Council itself. Esteemed delegates, she began, her tone carrying the weight of 8 years of preparation, I hope you've enjoyed your peaceful galaxy. I hope you've slept well knowing that the dangerous humans were safely locked away beyond your borders. But I'm afraid playtime is over. The transmission was being broadcast on every frequency, to every world, ensuring that no species could claim ignorance of what was about to unfold. For 8 years, you've told yourselves that exile was for the greater good. That human unpredictability was a threat to galactic stability. That we were too violent, too chaotic, too dangerous to exist among civilized beings. Chen paused, and in that silence, the galaxy held its collective breath. You were right, she continued. We are dangerous. We are unpredictable. And 8 years of exile has given us plenty of time to think about just how dangerous we can be. The transmission shifted to show images from the Outer Rim territories where humans had been forced to relocate. But instead of the struggling refugee camps the Council had expected, the images showed thriving colonies, massive industrial complexes, and most terrifying of all, shipyards that stretched across entire asteroid belts. While you've been playing your political games, Chen said, we've been busy. Building. Learning. Preparing. Did you think we would just fade away? Did you think we would forget what you took from us? The images changed again, showing battle footage from the Nexus Gate and Keth Nebula. Human ships moving with impossible grace, weapons that violated known physics, tactics that defied conventional military doctrine. We didn't just survive out there, Chen's voice continued. We evolved. Every challenge you thought would break us made us stronger. Every hardship you imposed taught us new ways to adapt. But it was the final image that truly drove home the scope of human preparation. A star map showing not just the exiled colonies, but a vast network of hidden bases, research stations, and military installations spread throughout the galaxy's unexplored regions. The humans hadn't been exiled at all. They had been planning. "For 8 years, we've been watching you," Chen said. "Learning your weaknesses. Studying your tactics. Preparing for the day we would come home. And now that day has arrived." The transmission ended with coordinates, a location in neutral space where the Galactic Council could send representatives for negotiations. But the subtext was clear: this wasn't a request for dialogue. It was a summons. Dr. Myrath was among the delegates who traveled to the meeting point, his scientific curiosity overriding his terror at what humanity might have become. The human ship that received them was a marvel of engineering, its corridors lined with technologies that shouldn't have been possible even for species with millennia of spaceflight experience. Admiral Chen met them in a conference room that could have been transplanted from any diplomatic facility in the galaxy, except for the viewport that showed Earth floating serenely in the distance. She looked exactly as she had 8 years ago, but there was something different in her eyes. Something that spoke of trials endured and lessons learned in the darkness between the stars. "Gentlemen," she said, gesturing for them to take their seats, "let's discuss the future of galactic civilization." Ambassador Kelthra's crystalline form flickered with nervous energy. "Admiral Chen," she began, "surely we can reach some accommodation. The exile was a mistake, yes, but surely we can move forward without violence." Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Violence?" she asked. "Who said anything about violence? We're not here to conquer your worlds or slaughter your populations. We're here to renegotiate the terms of galactic society." She activated a holographic display showing the current galactic power structure, a rigid hierarchy with the major species at the top and smaller civilizations arranged beneath them in order of influence and military might. "This system," Chen said, "is what led to our exile. A handful of powerful species making decisions for everyone else, crushing anything that doesn't fit their definition of civilized behavior." The display shifted, showing a new configuration where power was distributed more evenly, with humanity occupying a central position. "We propose a different arrangement," Chen continued. "One where decisions are made by consensus rather than decree. Where diversity is celebrated rather than feared. Where no species has the right to exile another simply because they find them inconvenient." Council Speaker Threx reared up aggressively. "And if we refuse? Will you impose this new order by force?" Chen's smile widened. "Force?" she asked. "Why would we need force when we have something much more effective?" She gestured to the viewport, and the delegates gasped as they saw what lay beyond Earth. Ships. Thousands upon thousands of ships, stretching in formation as far as the eye could see. But these weren't the sleek predators of the Liberation Fleet. These were cargo vessels, transport ships, colony vessels. An entire civilization mobile and ready to move. "You see," Chen said conversationally, "Exile taught us something valuable. We don't need your permission to exist. We don't need your approval to thrive. We've proven that we can build a civilization anywhere, under any conditions. So here's our proposal: you can accept the new order willingly, or you can watch as we establish it ourselves." Dr. Myrath's tentacles writhed with comprehension. "You're not threatening invasion," he said slowly. "You're threatening exodus." Chen nodded approvingly. "Very good, Doctor. Yes, we could conquer your worlds, but that would make us just another empire. Instead, we're offering choice. Join our new galactic community, or watch as every species with any sense follows us to the outer rim, leaving you with an empty galaxy to rule over." The implications were staggering. Humanity had spent 8 years not just building a military fleet, but creating an entire alternative civilization. They were offering every species in the galaxy the chance to abandon the rigid hierarchy of the current order in favor of something new, something that promised freedom from the political games that had dominated galactic society for millennia. Ambassador Kelthra's form flickered frantically. "This is blackmail," she protested. "This is evolution," Chen replied calmly. "Natural selection on a galactic scale. The species that adapt will thrive. The ones that don't." She shrugged eloquently. The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in galactic history. Not the usual posturing and threats, but a genuine examination of what galactic civilization could become. The humans presented detailed plans for their alternative society, complete with economic models, defensive arrangements, and governance structures that prioritized cooperation over domination. But it was the endorsements that truly shook the foundation of the old order. Species after species stepped forward to announce their intention to join the human exodus. Not just the small, powerless civilizations that had always chafed under the current system, but major powers, established species with their own fleets and territories. The Zephyrian Republic was first, with Dr. Myrath himself serving as spokesman. "We have seen what humanity can accomplish when pushed to their limits," he declared. "We choose to stand with those who prove that survival and growth are possible under any circumstances." The Kepler Collective followed, then the Meridian Empire, then dozens of others. Each declaration sent shockwaves through the remaining council members as they watched their carefully constructed hierarchy crumble before their eyes. Within 6 months, more than half the galaxy's species had committed to the human alternative. They began the Great Migration, entire civilizations packing up their core populations and following the human fleets toward the outer rim territories that had been transformed from barren wasteland into the foundation of a new order. The old Galactic Council still exists, ruling over a much smaller and quieter domain. They got exactly what they had wanted, a galaxy free of human unpredictability, human chaos, human tendency to disrupt established patterns. But it's a hollow victory, governing empty space and abandoned worlds while the real center of galactic civilization thrives beyond their reach. And in the new territories, on worlds that sparkle with technologies beyond the old galaxy's comprehension, children of a dozen species grow up learning the human lesson that their parents were forced to accept: when someone tries to cage you, you don't just escape. You build something so much better that everyone else wants to follow you out. The nightmare that keeps galactic leaders awake isn't the fear of human conquest. It's the fear that they're missing out on something extraordinary happening just beyond their borders, something they could have been part of if only they had chosen cooperation over control. Humanity came home, but they brought friends. And the galaxy would never be the same.